Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general.
The Handmaid's Tale is a show on Hulu that's all about Offred and Gilead and a world of strange, horrible things going on. But you know that by now. Episode 9, The Bridge, starts out with Pirate Jenny going through a big ritual where she has to give up her baby to the couple that she lives with. And she has a kind of a bit of a hoo-ha about that and freaks out a bit, but Aunt Lydia tells her off, and then she has to walk out to the special bus past all the other handmaids and says hi to June, who's kind of a bit worried about her, as is Aunt Lydia. And everyone's just a wee bit uneasy, like the new mum and Mrs. Commander, Pirate Jenny and her new family, and Offred and Off Robert, because Freddie wants to be in the Resistance now, and Bob's like, cool, well, go back to that club and get a package for me then, and do it as soon as you can. So Offred has to come up with an excuse to win over the commander, so she acts all coy and cheerful and thanks him for taking her to the club, and then he's like, well, let's go back tonight as soon as everyone's in bed, and she's like, phew, that worked. And she keeps up the act in front of Nick, who seems kind of upset about it, but plays his role as usual, pointing out that, they really ought to be cautious. But they just go upstairs, despite Offred wanting to go to the bar for a drink, and then they're straight to bed, which isn't what she was planning and what she wanted at all. But once they've been at it, Shaky tells her that he knows that it was a bit of a con and that she actually just wanted to come back to meet somebody. And she's like, uh-oh. But then he's like, no, I just mean your pal Moira. And then he goes off to her shower and lets them catch up, and he thinks he's being nice to them. And Moira's like, this is absolutely nuts, go away, why did you come back? And doesn't want absolutely anything to do with June's resistance plan because she's lost all hope. And June gets right upset, and that pisses off the commander, who thought he was doing something nice. And no one's having a good evening because Pirate Jenny is just about to have her first ceremony with a new family, and they're actually trying to be about as reasonable and nice as people probably can in that situation. They're not getting too hung up on the ritual and they're just trying to make her comfortable, but she ends up freaking out a bit and then curls up in the corner saying that he's going to come for me. And the one person not going to bed that night is Serena, and she's sitting sewing in the dark, then gets a bit sad looking at baby clothes and goes for a drink and ends up having a glass with the cook lady, and then they bond a bit, and it turns out that the cook had a son who died in the war. Serena's still up when Shaky gets in, but he tells her to go to bed. And June's woken up at the crack of dawn the next day and driven out in a rush to the bridge, because it turns out Pirate Jenny stole her baby back and she's threatening to jump off and kill them both, and she calls out her commander for making her do weird sex things and promising they'd run away together. So they send in Offred to talk her down, and after a couple of placatory attempts, she eventually says, look, I've got my own daughter, and we have to have hope because things are going to change, there's going to be a revolution. And that's why your baby has to live. She's got to have the chance to see that. And that seems to get through, so she hands the baby over, but then Janine throws herself off the bridge, and she ends up in a coma. And Pirate Jenny's commander gets taken away, and his moany wife is really bitchy at Serena, who finally loses the rag and storms into Shaky's private office. Meanwhile, June pops up to the shops and gets a special delivery from Moira, who's joined the Resistance, and escaped from the Jezebel's Club in a stolen van. Yeah! So what did I think? Well, I think this is one hell of a penultimate episode of a TV show. And after last week, I wasn't sure where the show was going to go because, as I said, there wasn't that much left in the book. But it turned out it went right back to the Jezebel Club. And total side note here, this is something that's kind of common in TV making, that maybe you don't know, that when they actually do TV shows, very often they actually film the episode in like blocks of 2 and mix up all the scenes from both episodes, which is why you tend to get one director doing 2 episodes of a show in a row. And quite often you'll find that they end up going to the same new locations from the show in those 2 episodes. And I know a lot of my audience are big fans of Outlander, but you'll notice that happens all the time. You tend to get episodes done in pairs by directors, and you tend to find that if there's a new location, they tend to go at 2 episodes in a row. I mean, sometimes, they'll film all the bits in one location on the same day, even if the bits are totally different parts of the season. I mean, that's just sensible planning when you're filming something. But yeah, now, that's why there's a return to the hotel, and that's also why we get another scene of Nick and Beth chatting in the same place, in the same lighting, in the same costume, like 2 episodes in a row. And it's totally fine, I'm not getting at that, at the continuity, it's just the practicalities of filmmaking. And I'm glad that we've gotten more of an insight into his character, and into hers as well. She's clearly going to be a character in the show, and it makes me wonder who she is, and how she knows Nick, and if there was some kind of thing going on with them before this all went weird.
Your eyes is incredible.
And I also loved the cinematography this week. Like, the hidden faces when June and Off Robert were discussing their plan for the package, or Shakespeare coming up the stairs out the dark towards his wife, or how the colour palette was even more emphasised this week than normal. I mean, at least it was more noticeable. I mean, maybe there wasn't that much of a change, but if you think about it, they've upped the reds and the blues so much. Everything, all the bluey greens look really cold and harsh, when in real life, things would look a bit more just merry and normal than this, but everything's got this really, really alien, horrible, drained look to it, apart from the red, which is really, really bright. And I thought that this scene was absolutely fantastic, because Serena has really grown during the show and as a character, and we're now starting to get sympathetic as her jaded cynicism towards the terrible grind of Gilead starts to feel palpable and real. And we see her look at her baby stuff, and I realised later that it was baby stuff because at the time it was actually too dark to make out because, this show. But yeah, that allows her to let the walls down, and she actually gets to know Rita the Kitchen Martha, and we find out that Rita had a son who died in the war. And I love that it was left entirely unspoken as to which side he was actually on. I mean, we can guess maybe he was on the same side as Serena's lot, because she does seem quite religious, Rita. But yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter, because Serena's still like, thank you for his service, and has a drink. And she's way too clever to bluntly assume which side this guy was probably on. And I like that we got some proper closure for the character arc of Pirate Jenny, who's been actually been really good all season. I mean, props to Madeline Brewer for like actually making such a strange character sympathetic in the end, because she was kind of annoying when she first turned up. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't like outright kill her off, even if we never see her again after this point. I mean, that was a fitting end to that character arc. And there wasn't an awful lot I could say against this episode. Although there was a little bit of convenience going on, like how Off Robert wants June to go back to the club tonight.
Tonight?
And then she manages to convince the commander to go back to the club tonight.
Tonight?
And then Moira decides to join up off screen, and somehow, don't ask, somehow she gets the package delivered by other means to the butcher, where June just happens to live near that shop. And if there's this sort of pipeline in place, and Moira manages to get access to it that quickly, then why wasn't Off Robert just using that in the first place? I mean, I don't think you're supposed to actually think about that, because at first I was like, did Moira drive that package there? But then, no, of course she couldn't, because there was several checkpoints and that would never have worked. But I think the point is you're just not supposed to think about it. Just let that one little bit just wash over you and assume that it all got sorted out. But yeah, I don't think they'll explain that next week. And yeah, that was it. Another fantastic episode. Absolutely loving this show. It's taken the place as the best thing I've watched recently. And I'm really keen to see what the finale has in store. So till next time, I've been Ian. And these have been my grumpy opinions. And a thanks to all my patrons and all my followers, and especially to my top tier patrons Judith Coloma and Michelle Forbes. Thanks everybody. You all take care now. I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.